Hungarian Folk Tales. The Pink Pig. Once upon a time, in a tiny village, there lived an old woman who never had a child of her own. And she was once overheard saying that she would not really care if God gave her a puppy, just as long as she had a young one to raise. The years went by, and the woman eventually gave birth to a baby. But it was actually a baby pig. And it was only then she remembered what she had said about God giving her a baby to raise. But what could she do? Now she had a pink pig, and it was her duty to raise it as best she could. The women of the village would gather in the day and gossip, and the pink pig would always sit with its mother and chuckle happily to itself. Let me tell you that the reason your little pink pig squeals so is that it wants to go to school with the other boys and girls in the village. Please don't mock me so, the mother of the pink pig said, who felt sadly ashamed to have such a child. But the rest of the women nagged her until she eventually sent the pink pig to school in the village. And there the pink pig continued to squeal for the teacher until she threw a book at the pink pig to silence it. The pink pig's nose moved from letter to letter until it eventually learned to read like the other children. One day the children all went off to pick strawberries, and the pink pig wanted to join them, but its mother wouldn't let it go. But the neighbours nagged her until she eventually agreed. And as the other children all carried baskets, the pink pig wanted one too, and so its mother hung a little basket on its snout. The boy who lived next door was exactly the same age as the little pink pig, and his mother told him to take very good care of the pig that afternoon. Then the pink pig lagged behind the others on their way, and it slipped out of its pigskin. And when it took it off, it was plain for all the world to see that the pink pig was the most beautiful little girl in the land. The pretty little girl quickly filled her basket and then slipped her pigskin back on and went to join the others. The boy next door saw all of this, but he did not say a word. All the children's parents began to worry about their offspring, and so they stood out on the road as they waited for them to come home. Look, the pink pig has bought strawberries too. Who could have filled its basket? The pink pig, the boy said, but he said nothing more of what he had seen. When the children grew up, the boys began to court the girls, and the boy next door went to see the pink pig. His father and mother watched forlornly and wondered what their son wanted from such an ugly beast. But the boy next door never gave up, and he only ever visited the pink pig. At last the time came to marry for the boy next door. Whom will you marry, son? Why, the pink pig, of course. Don't shame us, son. We are old and respected, so don't discredit us now. But his father could clearly see that the boy next door was determined to make the pink pig his bride for life. So he gathered his friends together and went to ask for the pig's hand in marriage. Sadly, my son will never get married if the pink pig refuses his request. The peculiar couple were engaged to be married for some time, and people gathered from far and near to witness their wedding. as it was not every day that a man married a pig. After the wedding feast, the young couple went up to the loft as was the custom. The boy next door had told his mother everything, and he had also told her to take good care and burn the pigskin when they threw it down. The band played when the young couple went up to the loft, and it played when they came down again. The pink pig had gone, and a beautiful girl appeared in its place. Everyone was bewildered by the beauty of the girl, who had once been a pink pig. And that is the end of the Pink Pig's curly tail. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Cricket. Once upon a time, there lived a bootmaker and a shoemaker. They were both as poor as church mice. One day the bootmaker said to the shoemaker, "Let the devil go hungry now, my friend. If we can't make an honest living out of our trade, let's make money any other way we can." So they thought and they thought until they came up with an idea. The shoemaker would lead the judge's 6 chestnut horses into the forest, tie them to a tree, and the bootmaker would read from an old book, as if it were written there, where the judge could find his horses. But all for good money, of course. That is exactly what they did, just as they had agreed. A search for the horses was launched that stretched far across the land, but to no avail. Then the bookmaker went to see the judge and said to him, "How much will you pay me, your worship, if I find you a clue?" The judge promised to pay him 300 florins. So the bootmaker took up an old book and began to read it out loud. Up on the snow-covered hillside, in the middle of the thick forest, all the 6 horses stand tied to a beech tree. That's where they will be found. All the village folk quickly prepared and hurried to the forest, where they found the 6 horses tied to a beech tree. Then the judge happily paid the bootmaker the 300 florins. News of Mr. Cricket, for that was the bootmaker's name, spread far and wide across the land. The myth was that he had a magic book, and nothing in the world could happen that he could not solve with the help of that book. Eventually even the king got word of this and was delighted by the news, as the queen had just lost her favourite ring and had made herself ill with crying. So the king had his royal carriage harnessed with 6 golden horses and sent off to fetch the bookmaker. He even sent his royal guards with it so that Mr. Cricket would come to no harm on the way back. Mr. Cricket felt so nervous that he began to shiver and quiver like a willow leaf, as he was afraid his deceit would be uncovered. When they arrived at the palace, the king greeted him with great joy. The king immediately set about telling him what had happened. "I'll have you know, Mr. Cricket, that if you find the ring, I'll give you 6 carts full of gold." "I'll do my best, your majesty, although I doubt I shall find it." Then he asked the king to have him locked up in a room so that he could think for 3 days. And the king willingly complied. He led Mr. Cricket into the loveliest room and sent him so much to eat and to drink that the poor man was at a loss where to begin. The first day went by, but Mr. Cricket came up with nothing. The second day went by, and the third, and poor Mr. Cricket began to lose heart. So he thought to himself that he would count how many courses he was going to have for the last meal of his life. The first servant came in with the first course, and Mr. Cricket said out loud, "Here comes the first." The servant was so frightened by this that he almost dropped the plate. He rushed out to the kitchen and said to the cook and the undercook, "Oh dear, we're done for. That magician knows we stole the ring." Of course, this was true. Indeed, it had been the servant, the cook and the undercook who had stolen the Queen's ring. They agreed that the second course should be taken in by the cook. And as the cook entered the room, Mr. Cricket said, "Here comes the second." The cook slammed down the plate in great fright and fled to the kitchen. "Oh dear, we're done for. I'll see what he says to me," said the undercook, and entered with the third course in hand. Of course, the bootmaker said, "Here comes the third." The undercook was so scared that he fell to his knees in front of Mr. Cricket and admitted that the three of them had stolen the ring. Then the servant and the cook ran in, and they too fell to their knees, begging him not to tell on them and promised to pay him 300 florins each. Mr. Cricket thought to himself that it sounded good enough. Beside the 6 carts of gold, he had them then produce the ring, which he pushed into a piece of white bread and threw it out of the window just as the king's turkeys were passing by. One of the turkeys picked it up and swallowed it at once. Mr. Cricket was thrilled to inform the king, "Your Majesty, I know where the ring is. Have that turkey killed and you will find the ring in its belly." So the turkey was killed, its stomach opened, and lo and behold, the Queen's ring came forth. Then the ring was taken quickly to the Queen. In the twinkling of an eye, the Queen stopped her sobbing and was filled with the joy of the world. The king had 6 carts filled with gold. Then he had Mr. Cricket driven home in the royal carriage, and his steward and a regiment of soldiers escort him so that no harm could come to all the gold. As they were riding along, an idea crossed the steward's mind. He thought, "I'll play a trick on you, you bootmaker magician." So he got out of the coach, spotted a cricket on the ground, picked it up and held it tight in his hand. Then he asked Mr. Cricket, "Well, if you know so much, tell me what I'm holding in my hand." Mr. Cricket scratched his head and finally said, "Well, Cricket, you're in a tight corner now." "That's right," said the steward. "It is indeed a cricket. Your wisdom is endless. Now I know." Hungarian Folk Tales. The Round Stone. Once upon a time, there lived a poor man. He had many, many children. Off he would go to catch a fish for the table, for they were very poor and had to eat. His wife would cook these fish for all the children. That's what they had to live on. Now, not far away from there lived his brother and his family, and very rich he was too. But he never helped his brother out. When there wasn't a bite to eat in the poor man's house, he would send to his brother, in the name of God, to let him have enough flour to make supper for the children. But he never got any. Once, when there was hardly a scrap to eat for a whole week, the poor fisherman said to his wife he was off to fish and he wouldn't come back until his satchel was full. He sat down on the bank early in the morning. No matter where he cast his net, there was nothing in it when he drew it in, not even a fish as big as my little finger. Now dusk was on him and still no fish. The poor man grew very angry. Well then, he thought, that's it. I'll cast the net one more time, and no matter what, I'll go home. When he pulled it out, well, it was as heavy as could be. Now then, said he to himself, there must be a huge fish in it. Indeed, he could hardly pull the net out of the water. Out it came, and what was in it but a great, big, round stone. Ah, well, said he, I'll take it home anyway. At least the children at home will be able to play with it. And home he took it. His children were still awake. They looked at the great big round stone and started to play with it. They couldn't go to bed. They were having such fun with the game. They rolled it up and rolled it down the room and screamed with delight because the stone was getting brighter and brighter. Look, wife dear, this is some kind of wonder of a stone. It's shining like a diamond. Dear heart, said she, it's a diamond for sure. So they quickly decided that she should go next day to show the stone to the king himself, to see if he wanted to buy it for a lot of money. Up she rose at the dawning of day, wrapped the stone in a kerchief, and set off to see the king. First she saluted the king in the proper way. She took out the stone and showed it to him. Now, where did you find that, my poor good woman? Said the king, and was astonished. She told him that her husband had found it in the water. Then, my poor good woman, let me have it, and I'll give you 1,000 florins for it. Because he knew that it was a real diamond. The poor woman did not say a word. She just gave a little cough. Well, if 1,000 isn't enough, I'll give you 2,000. And the poor woman coughed again, and was so confused that not a word could she speak. But the king thought she wanted more. Listen then, my poor good woman, would you think 3 sacks of gold would be enough for the stone? This time she didn't cough. She just nodded her head. Straight away the king filled 3 sacks with gold and even gave her a cart and a horse so that she could go home. Well, didn't she go home in great happiness? Or wasn't there great happiness at home too? Never again would they go hungry. Well then, dear wife, said the poor fisherman, we should weigh the gold to see how much we have. Right you are, said she. Now there wasn't a weight in the house. One of the boys went to see the rich uncle. What would you be wanting a weight for? Asked the rich relation mockingly. My father wants to weigh some money, said the boy. Well, the rich relative had a great laugh at this. Here you are, son. Here's the weight. And I'll come too, for this is something I have to see. Your father weighing money. So the rich relation stood, and all he could do was open his mouth and his eyes wide in amazement. Not even he had ever seen as much money all at once. Where did you get all that gold from? The fisherman thought to himself, I'll have a little joke here. The king gave it to me in return for 3 cats. How could that be? Asked the rich relation. Well, the fact is, brother, the king's palace is knee-deep in mice. So many that the king and the royal family cannot even eat their lunch or their supper. I heard of this, and while I was coming and going, I got 3 cats and brought them with me as a present for the king. It was as if I'd been given a reprieve, so delighted was the king, and he straight away gave me 3 sacks of gold for the 3 cats. The rich relation heard this and couldn't wait to get started. Well, up he went and called everywhere in the villages around them, and he bought every cat there was for a right handful of money. He packed them all into his cart, and off he went to the king. What have you come here for? Asked the king. Your Majesty, I heard that you were in great need of cats, so that's what I've brought you. You mean in that sack there's nothing but cats? Let me see. The rich relation opened the sack. There were cats jumping all over the place. Cats to the right, cats to the left, cats everywhere. And you know what cats are like? They ripped and tore at everything. Dear heavens, what is going on here? Many cats, that's what. The king had him seized for playing such a trick on him. He threw him into prison, and for all I know, he's still in there, if he hasn't been set free, for catting the king.